The attic air hung thick with the scent of forgotten things, old wood-dried flowers, and the faint, sweet smell of dust. Sunlight, broken into hazy shafts by the grimy window panes, illuminated dancing motes as Sarah stirred the quiet air. She wore an old t-shirt and jeans, a bandana tied around her head to keep her hair out of her face, and a determined look in her eyes. Her grandmother, Nana Rose, was humming downstairs, probably making another batch of her famous lemonade. Sarah, on the other hand, was wrestling with the ghosts of generations. Just get rid of anything you don't recognize, sweetie. Nana Rose had called up an hour ago. If it's not furniture, it's probably junk. But Sarah wasn't so sure. To her, every item in this sprawling Victorian attic held a story. Trunk filled with lacy dresses from the 1920s, the worn leather-bound books with brittle pages, the cracked porcelain dolls staring with glassy eyes from a forgotten corner. They all whispered of lives lived, joys experienced, and sorrows endured. Sarah, at 16, felt a strange connection to these echoes of the past. She preferred old records to new pop songs and found history classes more engaging than anything happening on social media. She knelt beside a stack of old hat boxes, their cardboard sides soft with age. Some were empty, others held hats, crushed into odd shapes, feathers drooping like tired birds. She carefully lifted one, revealing another box underneath. This one was different. It was smaller, made of dark, polished wood, intricately carved with swirling patterns that reminded her of ivy. It looked like something from a pirate movie, or maybe a fancy jewelry box from a bygone era. Her heart gave a little skip. This was definitely not junk. She brushed away the thick layer of dust, revealing the rich grain of the wood beneath. The latch was a simple brass clasp, tarnished green with time. With a gentle click, it sprang open. Sarah peered inside, her breath held. It wasn't filled with jewels or gold, or even old coins. It contained only one thing. It was yellowed, almost sepia-toned, with crisp, sharp edges that suggested it had never been folded or crumpled. The paper felt thick, substantial, unlike the flimsy envelopes of today. The stamp, though faded, was clearly an old U.S. postage stamp, a portrait of a president she didn't immediately recognize, but it looked old, definitely pre-digital age. Her gaze fell to the handwriting, a graceful looping script in dark blue ink. It was addressed simply, Mr. Elvis Presley, Graceland, Memphis, Tennessee. Sarah gasped softly. Elvis Presley. The king. Her mind raced. This letter was addressed to Elvis Presley. But what truly sent a shiver down her spine was the postmark. Small, circular, and incredibly clear despite its age. JUL 12, 1958. That was 66 years ago, an untouched letter sent to Elvis Presley from 1958. And what made it even more astonishing, more mysterious, was the unbroken seal. The flap was still glued firmly down, undisturbed. For over half a century, it had never been opened. A wave of questions crashed over her. Why was it never opened? Did Elvis ever receive it? Or did it somehow get lost in transit and end up here in her grandmother's dusty attic? But Nana Rose had lived in this house since the 1970s. It wasn't old enough to have been here since 1958. The box, the letter, they must have belonged to someone else. She carefully lifted the envelope from its wooden cradle. It felt strangely heavy, imbued with the weight of time, an untold secret. The return address was handwritten in the upper left corner, also in elegant script, making it harder to read. Eleanor Vance, 14 Sycamore Lane, Willow Creek, Ohio. Eleanor Vance, who was she? A fan, obviously. A young woman, perhaps, dreaming of her idol in the heart of Ohio, carefully penning her thoughts, sealing them, and sending them off into the world. There was a faint, almost imperceptible scent clinging to the paper, something floral like old lavender mixed with the musty smell of age. She imagined Eleanor, perhaps sitting at a small desk, the radio playing one of Elvis's hits, her heart fluttering as she wrote. The image was so vivid, it felt as if she could almost reach back through time and touch her. She heard Nana Rose's footsteps creaking up the attic stairs. "Find anything interesting, dear? Or just more junk?" Sarah clutched the letter to her chest, a strange mix of awe and possessiveness swirling within her. "Nana," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "I found something incredible." Nana Rose, a spry woman with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, peered over Sarah's shoulder. Her eyes, usually full of warmth and laughter, widened slightly as she saw the old envelope. "Goodness gracious," she murmured, taking it gently from Sarah's hand. Her fingers, gnarled with age but still deft, traced the cursive writing. Elvis Presley, 1958, unopened. She looked at Sarah, a new kind of wonder in her gaze. "Well, I'll be. I've never seen this before in my life, not once. Where did you find this box?" Sarah pointed to the empty space where the wooden box had sat. It was under those old hat boxes. It looked like it had been there for ages. "It must have belonged to the Andersons," Nana Rose mused, referring to the family who had owned the house before her own parents bought it. In the early 1970s, they were very private people, old Mrs. Anderson had. Imagine that, a letter to Elvis just sitting here all this time. But why was it never opened, Nana? Sarah asked, the question burning in her mind. And why is it here? It was addressed to Graceland. Nana Rose shrugged, her brow furrowed in thought. "That, my dear, is a mystery. Maybe it got sent to the wrong address by mistake. Or maybe the sender changed her mind and never mailed it, but still kept it in that box for some reason. The Andersons were from Ohio, weren't they? Or had family there? I can't quite remember." She handed the letter back to Sarah, her eyes twinkling. "Looks like you've stumbled upon a real piece of history, sweetie. And a puzzle, too." Sarah held the letter, feeling its fragile weight, a portal to a bygone era. She knew with a certainty that settled deep in her bones that this wasn't just an old letter. It was a story waiting to be told, and somehow she felt it was her job to tell it. The Elvis letter became Sarah's constant companion. It lay on her desk, carefully placed beside her laptop, a tangible link to a world she could only imagine. The mystery of its unopened state nagged at her. Every time her eyes fell on the crisp, unbroken seal, she felt a powerful urge to tear it open to finally read the words that had been locked away for over 6 decades. But something held her back. It felt wrong, almost sacrilegious, to violate such a profound silence. "It's like a time capsule," she explained to her best friend Maya during a video call later that evening. "Imagine writing your deepest thoughts to your biggest idol, and then it just sits there unopened for 66 years. Maya, who was more interested in TikTok dances than historical artifacts, listened patiently. "So are you going to open it? What if it's like a love letter or a confession?" Sarah shook her head. "It's from 1958. Fan letters back then were probably more innocent. Just adoration, hopes, dreams. I don't think it's anything scandalous, but the fact that it's unopened is the real enigma." She learned about Elvis's career, his rise to superstardom, his drafting into the Army that year, which was a huge event. She discovered that Graceland was already a popular landmark. Even in 1958, a magnet for fans from all over the world. Why would a letter addressed clearly to him there from a seemingly normal address in Ohio never reach him? Or if it did, why wasn't it opened by his staff, as was common for fan mail? The more she thought about it, the more convinced she became that the letter had never left the sender's possession. It had been written, sealed, perhaps even addressed, but never mailed. That wooden box, that careful preservation, it spoke of intention, of something being kept, not lost. But why keep an unsent letter? She wondered aloud to Nana Rose over breakfast one morning. Why not just throw it away if you decided not to send it? Nana Rose stirred her coffee, a thoughtful look on her face. "Well, sometimes, dear, the act of writing something down is enough. It's like a diary entry. You get your feelings out, you put them on paper, and then maybe you realize you don't need to share them anymore. Or maybe the circumstances changed. Circumstances, Sarah pressed. Think about it, Nana Rose said. Or maybe she just grew up a little and realized that her dreams about meeting Elvis were just that, dreams. Sarah considered this. The idea of a young girl's dreams being put on hold, or even shattered, resonated with her. It made the letter even more poignant. It wasn't just a piece of fan mail. It was a snapshot of a moment in time, a tangible representation of a young heart's hopes, and perhaps its quiet disappointments. She also thought about the Andersons, the previous owners of the house. Nana Rose knew very little about them, only that they were a quiet, elderly couple who had lived there for decades before passing away. Had the letter belonged to Mrs. Anderson or someone else who lived with them? The decision of whether to open the letter weighed heavily on her. If she opened it, she would finally know its contents. But she would also break the spell, destroy the 66-year-old seal and lose a part of its mystery. She felt a growing responsibility towards Eleanor Vance, a girl she had never met who lived in a different time. She wanted to understand her story, not just the words she wrote. "I think I need to find Eleanor Vance," Sarah declared to Nana Rose one afternoon. "Or at least find out what happened to her." Nana Rose looked up from her knitting, her eyebrows raised. "That's a tall order, sweetie. People move. They change names. They pass on. That was a long time ago." "I know," Sarah admitted. "But the address is right there, Willow Creek, Ohio. It's a start. What if she's still alive? Or what if she has family who remembers her? You've got your grandfather's stubborn streak. You know that when he got an idea in his head, he wouldn't let it go. All right, Willow Creek, Ohio. Let's see what we can find out. You'll need more than just an old address. You'll need to do some proper detective work." Sarah's eyes lit up. This wasn't just about Elvis anymore. It was about Eleanor. It was about a girl from the past whose story was waiting to be uncovered. And Sarah, for the first time in a long time, felt like she was on the verge of something truly meaningful. The unopened letter was no longer just an object. It was a beckoning hand reaching out from history, inviting her on a journey, and she was ready to take the first step. Sarah plunged into her new project with the zeal of a budding historian. Her laptop became her primary tool as she scoured online archives, ancestry websites, and newspaper database. Eleanor Vance, Willow Creek, Ohio, 1958. The keywords felt like a mantra. Willow Creek wasn't a large city. In fact, it sounded like the quintessential small town, the kind where everyone knew everyone else's business. This could be both a blessing and a curse. A blessing because records might be more centralized. A curse because there might not be many digital records at all. Her initial searches for Eleanor Vance in Ohio yielded hundreds of results. Vance wasn't an uncommon surname. Adding Willow Creek narrowed it down. But she still faced a wall of privacy laws and outdated information. Birth certificates, marriage licenses, death records. These weren't usually accessible to just anyone online, especially for someone who wasn't a direct relative. "It's like looking for a needle in a haystack," she grumbled to Nana Rose one afternoon, poring over a blurred scan of an old Willow Creek High School yearbook from 1957. "Keep going," Nana Rose encouraged, bringing her a plate of freshly baked cookies. "These things take time. Have you tried looking for other Vances in Willow Creek? Maybe her parents' names or siblings?" Sarah nodded. "I tried, but without knowing their first names. It's still tough. And if they moved away, it's even harder to track." She sighed, nibbling a cookie. "I found a local historical society website for Willow Creek. It has a contact email. Maybe they'd have some old town directories or something." Excellent idea, Nana Rose exclaimed. Small-town historical societies are often run by wonderful people who know everything about everyone. Whoever lived there, they love a good mystery. Sarah drafted an email carefully explaining her discovery of the unopened letter, emphasizing its historical significance and her desire to understand the story behind it, without revealing the letter's contents. She attached a photo of the envelope, hoping it would add credibility. She hit send, a nervous flutter in her stomach. Felt like casting a bottle into the ocean, hoping someone would find it. A few days later, an email arrived from Mrs. Henderson, Willow Creek Historical Society. Sarah's heart leaped. The email was polite and curious. Mrs. Henderson confirmed that the Vance family had indeed lived in Willow Creek for many years. Eleanor Vance, she wrote, was a quiet, artistic girl, much loved in the community. She attended Willow Creek High School and was known for her beautiful singing voice and her passion for music. She graduated in 1958. Sarah grinned. The yearbook she'd found was from 1957, meaning Eleanor would have been a senior in 1958. That explained why she wasn't listed as a junior. I do remember she had a very good friend, Margaret Miller, who lived just a few doors down. Margaret still lives in Willow Creek, and she might be able to tell you more about Eleanor and her family. She's a lovely woman, a bit. Pivot, someone who knew Eleanor personally, who might remember the circumstances of her move, and perhaps even the letter itself. This was more than she could have hoped for. Sarah practically shouted, running into the living room where her grandmother was watching TV. She showed her the email. She still lives there. Nana Rose's eyes widened as she read the email. Well, I'll be Margaret Miller. Of course, that name rings a bell for Mrs. Henderson's stories about the old town. She looked at Sarah, a mischievous glint in her eye. It sounds like your little detective project is turning into quite the adventure, doesn't it? It is, Sarah exclaimed, bouncing on the balls of her feet. I have to go there, Nana. I have to meet Margaret. She's the key to all of this. She can tell me about Eleanor, about why the letter was never opened. Nana Rose chuckled. I thought you might say that Willow Creek isn't exactly around the corner, though. It's a good 6-hour drive. Maybe more. Please, Nana, Sarah pleaded, her eyes wide with earnestness. It's summer break. We have time. This is more important than anything else right now. I feel like I owe it to Eleanor to finish her story. Nana Rose looked at the old letter, still carefully placed on the coffee table. She paused, then smiled. All right, my dear, pack your bags. It sounds like Willow Creek is calling this a road trip, it is. Sarah threw her arms around her grandmother. Thank you, Nana. Thank you, thank you. The journey to Willow Creek, Ohio felt like stepping back in time. The old letter wasn't just a curiosity anymore. It was a compass, pointing her towards a past that was slowly, wonderfully coming alive. The mystery of the unopened fan letter to Elvis Presley was no longer a silent enigma. It was a living story, and Sarah was about to become a part of it. The old minivan, affectionately nicknamed the Wanderer by Nana Rose, hummed steadily down the highway. The landscape outside the window transformed from bustling suburbs to rolling farmlands dotted with old barns and sleepy towns. Sarah, armed with a carefully printed map, Nana Rose insisted on paper maps, just in case the satellites decided to take a nap, felt a mixture of anticipation and nervous excitement. Are you sure Margaret will want to talk to us, Nana? Sarah asked, adjusting her seatbelt. I mean, we're complete strangers, showing up with a 66-year-old letter. Nana Rose, a true believer in the kindness of strangers, waved a dismissive hand. Nonsense. People love to talk about the old days, especially if it involves someone they cared about. Besides, Mrs. Henderson from the Historical Society already vouched for us. And who wouldn't be intrigued by an unopened letter to Elvis? Just be polite, tell her the truth, and listen, you'll be fine. Sarah tried to imagine Eleanor Vance. Was she tall or short? Did she have dark hair like the girls in the blurry yearbook photos? What kind of music did she listen to besides Elvis? Did she dream of leaving Willow Creek, or was she content there? The journey became a mental exercise in trying to build a picture of a girl from a different era. They talked about the 1950s. Nana Rose, who was a few years younger than Eleanor, would have been shared her own memories. It was a different world, sweetie Cinchin. Girls were expected to get married, have children, be homemakers. Dreams of becoming a rock star or traveling the world weren't really encouraged for young women. And Elvis, well, he was a sensation. He broke all the rules. And that's why young people adored him. He was thrilling, a bit dangerous. And so, Sarah imagined Eleanor Vance humming along to Hound Dog on the radio. Perhaps secretly dancing in her bedroom, a rebel in her heart, in a time that valued conformity. The letter then wasn't just a fan note. It was perhaps a quiet act of rebellion, a whisper of a dream. They stopped at a quaint diner for lunch, the kind with checkered floors and a jukebox that actually worked. Sarah ordered a milkshake and a burger soaking in the atmosphere. It felt authentic, a glimpse of the past. Nana Rose talked to the waitress, an older woman who recognized the familiar signs of the traveler. "You know, Sarah," Nana Rose said as they drove on, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the fields, "this whole thing has really got me thinking about dreams that never quite come to fruition for one reason or another. It doesn't make them any less real, does it?" No, it doesn't. Maybe Eleanor's dream wasn't just about Elvis. Maybe it was about something bigger, about being seen, about making her mark. The further they drove into Ohio, the more the landscape flattened, and the roads became narrower. Soon they were passing through small towns that consisted of little more than a post office, a general store, and a church. Finally, a sign, "Welcome to Willow Creek." The town was exactly as Sarah had pictured it, quiet, charming, and frozen in a pleasant kind of time. Old Victorian houses lined the main street, their paint peeling just enough to suggest age, not neglect. There was a town square with a bandstand and a small, antique-looking clock tower. They found the Historical Society easily enough, a small brick building next to the old library. Mrs. Henderson, a woman with sparkling eyes and a neat white bob, greeted them warmly. She recognized Sarah from her email. "So glad you decided to come," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I told Margaret you might be stopping by. She's looking forward to it. I think she doesn't get many visitors who are interested in the old days." Mrs. Henderson gave them directions to Margaret Miller's house, which was just a few blocks away, on a quiet tree-lined street. "It's the White House, with the blue shutters. Lots of roses in the front yard. You can't miss it." As they drove, Sarah clutched the letter, its presence a comforting weight in her hand. This was it, the moment of truth. She was about to meet someone who knew Eleanor Vance, who might be able to unlock the secrets held within this single unopened envelope. The journey to Willow Creek wasn't just about finding a person, it was about finding a piece of history, a forgotten fragment of a young girl's life. And Sarah felt ready. She felt a connection to Eleanor, a sense of shared purpose across the decades. The old letter was about to speak. Margaret Miller's house was exactly as Mrs. Henderson had described. A charming white two-story with vibrant blue shutters, almost entirely engulfed by climbing roses, their blooms a riot of pinks and reds. A swing hung from the sturdy branch of an ancient oak in the front yard, looking as though it had witnessed countless children's games and whispered secrets. Sarah and Nana Rose walked up the stone path, a nervous flutter in Sarah's stomach. This was more real than any online search. This was face-to-face, a direct connection to the past. Sarah held the precious envelope carefully, almost reverently. A small woman, her hair a delicate silver halo around a kind, wrinkled face, opened the door before they even had a chance to knock. She had a gentle smile and eyes that seemed to hold a vast reservoir of memories. This had to be Margaret. "You must be Sarah and Rose," Margaret said, her voice soft and slightly raspy, like dry leaves rustling. "Mrs. Henderson called me. Please come in. It's not often I have such intriguing visitors. Her living room was cozy and filled with an eclectic collection of antique furniture, floral patterns, and framed photographs. The air smelled of tea and something faintly sweet like baking. Tabby Cat was curled up asleep on an armchair. Undisturbed by their arrival, they settled onto a plush velvet sofa. Margaret poured them tea from a delicate china teapot. Sarah took a deep breath and began to explain, holding out the letter. "My name is Sarah, and this is my grandmother. Rose, we found this letter in our attic, addressed to Elvis Presley, postmark 1958. Her eyes, which had been warm and welcoming, now held a hint of sadness, a distant look. She took the letter gently, her fingers brushing the old paper, tracing the familiar handwriting. "Eleanor," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "My dear Eleanor." She looked up at Sarah, a faint smile playing on her lips. Yes, I knew Eleanor very well. We were inseparable, best friends from kindergarten until she moved away. Margaret then began to paint a vivid picture of Eleanor Vance. Eleanor was quiet, she said, but had a fierce, vibrant spirit. She loved to read, to draw, and most of all, to sing. Her voice was like an angel's, Margaret reminisced, her eyes misting over. She used to sing along to Elvis records for hours. She knew every word to every song. She had such a crush on him, a pure, innocent kind of adoration, like so many girls her age. She described their childhood adventures, playing hide-and-seek in the fields, sharing secrets under the old oak tree in her own front yard, dreaming about their futures. Eleanor, Margaret recalled, had big dreams. She dreamed of going to college, which wasn't common for girls in their town back then, and she dreamed of a life beyond Willow Creek. Music was her escape, her passion. She was a talented artist, too. Margaret added, her gaze drifting towards a frame of watercolor on her wall. "A beautiful Steve." Poof. No, never. She talked about him constantly, of course, but she never mentioned writing a letter. I mean, we all knew fan mail probably never reached him, personally. It was usually handled by his staff, but Eleanor was very private about her deeper feelings. She looked at the unopened seal, her brow furrowed. They had to move closer to an aunt who could help care for Eleanor's mother in another state. It broke Eleanor's heart to leave. She lost touch with most of us. We wrote for a while, but then the letters just stopped coming. Margaret's voice trailed off. A family crisis, a sudden move. It all started to click for Sarah. This was the circumstance Nana Rose had talked about. This explained why Eleanor's dreams might have been put on hold. "This letter," Margaret said, her voice filled with wonder as she turned it over in her hands. It must have been something she wrote just before they left away to say goodbye to her old life, to her dreams, to everything she had to leave behind. Sarah's heart ached for Eleanor. To have to abandon your home, your friends, your dreams all so suddenly at such a young age. It made the unopened letter not just a mystery, but a profound symbol of a life uprooted, a dream deferred. "May I open it, Margaret?" Sarah asked, almost afraid to break the spell. Do you think Eleanor would have wanted it to be read?" Margaret looked at the letter, then at Sarah, a gentle determination in her eyes. "Yes," she said firmly. "I think she would, all these years." A voice silent. It's time for her words to be heard. The silence in Margaret's living room was profound, punctuated only by the distant hum of the refrigerator and the gentle ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. Sarah held her breath, the weight of 66 years of unspoken words resting in her hands. Margaret watched her expression, a mix of anticipation and sorrow. Nana Rose leaned forward, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by quiet reverence. With utmost care, Sarah inserted a thin, sharp letter opener beneath the brittle, yellowed flap of the envelope. It resisted for a moment, then with a soft tearing sound, the ancient glue gave way. The seal was broken, A wave of mingled triumph and melancholy washed over Sarah. She gently slid out the single sheet of paper inside. It was folded neatly in thirds, the same thick, creamy paper as the envelope. The scent of old lavender, stronger now, wafted through the air. Sarah unfolded it slowly, revealing the same elegant looping script from the envelope. Ink was a dark, vibrant blue, as if it had been written just yesterday. The writing filled the page carefully, thoughtfully. She began to read aloud, her voice soft, giving voice to Eleanor's words. Across the decades, July 10th, 1958. Dear Mr. Presley, I hope this letter finds you well. My name is Eleanor Vance, and I live in Willow Creek, Ohio. I know you must receive thousands of letters every day, and I don't expect you to ever read this one personally, but I just had to write to you. I have been a fan of yours ever since I first heard Heartbreak Hotel. On the radio, your music, sir, is like nothing I have ever heard. It's so exciting, so full of life. When I listen to your songs, I feel like I can do anything. You have a way of making even the saddest lyrics sound full of hope. My friends and I listen to your records on my family's phonograph all the time. Sometimes, when no one is around, I try to sing along, imagining I'm on a stage just like you. I know it's a silly dream for a girl from a small town, but your music makes me feel brave enough to dream it. I heard you will be joining the army soon. My father says it's an important duty, and I know you will serve our country with honor. Just as you perform your music with such passion, I will miss your new songs while you are gone, but I will be listening to your old ones and waiting for your return. I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Presley. Thank you for your music, for your energy, and for making so many people like me feel a little bit less ordinary. You bring joy to so many lives. I wish you all the best. Always sincerely, Eleanor Vance. Sarah finished reading. The letter was exactly as she had imagined. Innocent, heartfelt, pure, no dramatic confession, no secret message. Just genuine admiration from a devoted fan. It was beautiful in its simplicity. Margaret reached out her hand, trembling slightly, and took the letter from Sarah. She read it herself, her lips moving silently, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh, Eleanor," she whispered, "that's so like her, so gentle, so hopeful." Then on the bottom of the page, beneath Eleanor's signature, Margaret noticed something Sarah hadn't mentioned. "Look," Margaret said, pointing a shaky finger, "there's something else, on the very bottom." Sarah leaned closer. Faintly, in the corner of the page, almost hidden by the fold, was a small, delicate sketch. It was a simple line drawing, but instantly recognizable, a guitar. Not just any guitar, but the distinctive shape of an acoustic guitar with a few musical notes floating playfully above it. It was tiny, almost an afterthought, but it perfectly captured Eleanor's artistic talent and her deep love for music. "She was so talented," Margaret murmured, tracing the sketch with her finger. "She used to draw. All the time, she always said, music and art were her escape." The letter was a testament to Eleanor's spirit. It spoke of a young girl on the cusp of adulthood, full of dreams, finding inspiration in the vibrant music of her time. It was a personal note, a moment The mystery of what was inside was solved, replaced by a deeper understanding of who Eleanor was. But the question remained, why was it never mailed? Why was such a heartfelt message kept locked away in a wooden box for over 6 decades? Margaret's eyes, still glistening with tears, met Sarah's. "I think I might know why this never left Willow Creek," she said, her voice hushed. "I remember something now, something Eleanor told me not long before she left. Something that made her put her dreams aside." Margaret took a long, slow sip of her tea, her gaze fixed on the now opened letter, specifically the small guitar sketch at the bottom. "Eleanor had a plan, you see." She began, her voice soft but clear, as if recalling a conversation that had taken place just yesterday. "A secret plan," she called it. "She was going to tell me after her mother got better. But then, well, then things changed." Sarah and Nana Rose listened intently, the weight of the moment pressing in. This was the missing piece, the explanation for the unopened letter, the quiet tragedy hidden within its long silence. Eleanor wasn't just a fan, Margaret continued. She saw Elvis as more than just a singer. She saw him as a symbol of possibility, a boy from humble beginnings who became a star. She felt a connection to him because she believed that maybe, just maybe, she could make her own dreams come true, too. Kind woman who had offered Eleanor a place to stay if she ever wanted to visit. Eleanor's plan, Margaret revealed, was to go to Memphis, but to try and, well, she wanted to see if she could get into a music school there. Or even just work near a recording studio, something connected to music. She dreamed of writing songs, maybe even singing them. Sarah's eyes widened. This was bigger than a fan letter. This was a young girl's entire future, her deepest aspiration. She had saved up a little money from babysitting and helping out at the general store, Margaret went on. This must be that letter, she whispered. The one she wrote before she left. So she was planning to mail it from Memphis? Sarah prompted. Margaret shook her head sadly. There was no money for a nurse, no family nearby to help. Margaret paused, her voice thick with emotion. Eleanor canceled her plans. She packed away her dream. Quietly, she dedicated herself to caring for her mother, to running the household, to raising her brothers. Eleanor, a vibrant, artistic girl forced to abandon her aspirations for the sake of her family. It was a story as old as time, but no less heartbreaking. She never talked about Memphis again, Margaret said, wiping a tear from her eye. She just let it go. All her dreams, all her plans, they just disappeared. I never saw her draw or sing with the same light in her eyes after that. Not really. She visited once a few years later, but she was a different person, older. Margaret looked at the letter, her gaze full of profound understanding. She couldn't. It would have been a reminder of everything she had to give up. The wooden box, the careful preservation. It wasn't about being lost in the mail. It was about a dream that was never sent. Eleanor had kept the letter not as a forgotten item, but as a silent testament to a path not taken, a life she almost lived. It was a relic of her unfulfilled potential, a cherished memory of a young girl who dared to dream big in a small town, only to have those dreams put on an indefinite hold. Sarah felt a rush of empathy so strong it brought tears to her own eyes. This wasn't just a fan letter, it was a sealed whisper of a lost future, a young heart's quiet sacrifice. The innocence of the words, the pure admiration for Elvis, now seemed even more poignant against the backdrop of Eleanor's unspoken heartbreak. The letter was a monument to a dream deferred, a private testament to a girl who chose family over her own aspirations. And now, after all these years, its story was finally revealed. The afternoon sun began to dip lower, casting long golden shadows through Margaret's windows. The air in the room, once thick with mystery, now felt heavy with the weight of Eleanor's story. Sarah sat there clutching the opened letter, her mind reeling. She just gave up everything. Sarah finally managed, her voice barely a whisper. Her singing, her art, her whole future. Margaret nodded slowly. That's what it felt like to me. Her family needed her, and Eleanor was the kind of person who always put others first. She had a strong sense of duty. Even as a young girl, it was both her greatest strength and, in this instance, her greatest sorrow. Nana Rose reached over and gently squeezed Sarah's hand. That was common back then, sweetie. Especially for girls, family obligations often came before personal ambition. It wasn't right, perhaps, by today's standards, but it was how things were. But imagine, Sarah said, her voice filled with a raw emotion, writing that letter, full of hope, planning your whole life, and then in an instant it all disappears. And you just pack it away. That letter was a piece of her dream. She couldn't mail it because it was too painful, too real a reminder of what she lost. Margaret nodded, her eyes, gleaming painful. Precisely. She must have kept it as a personal token, a private memory of a dream that almost took flight. It was a bittersweet keepsake, I imagine. "Do you know what happened to Eleanor after she moved away?" Sarah asked, a sudden urgency in her voice. Did she find happiness? Did she ever get to pursue any of her dreams? Margaret sighed. "I hope she found joy in her life, even if it wasn't the joy she'd originally envisioned for herself." She paused, then added, "I know her mother eventually recovered, at least enough to live a long life, thanks to Eleanor's care. So her sacrifice wasn't in vain in that sense." The story resonated deeply with Sarah. In a world where her own generation was encouraged to pursue every ambition, no matter how grand, Eleanor's quiet sacrifice felt incredibly profound. It made the innocent fan letter to Elvis a symbol of hope and aspiration, even more powerful. It wasn't just about the king, it was about the millions of ordinary people whose lives were shaped by the era, by their circumstances, and by their own quiet courage. "I think Eleanor was incredibly brave," Sarah said, looking at the letter. "To write this, to have those dreams, and then to make such a difficult choice. It takes a different kind of courage to set your dreams aside for others." "It does," Margaret agreed softly. Eleanor had a gentle spirit, but she was strong. Stronger than anyone knew. Sarah looked at the letter, then at Margaret. An idea began to form in her mind. "Margaret, would you mind if I took a very high-quality photo of this letter, and maybe of some of Eleanor's other art, if you have any? And would you be willing to share some of your memories for the Willow Creek Historical Society?" Margaret looked surprised, then a soft smile spread across her face. "For the Historical Society? Why? That would be lovely. I have old photographs, some of Eleanor and me together, and a few other sketches she gave me over the years." "And the letter," Sarah added. "I think the story of this letter, and of Eleanor, should be part of Willow Creek's history. It's a story of an ordinary person with an extraordinary heart. It's about more than just Elvis. It's about dreams and sacrifice." Margaret reached out and squeezed Sarah's hand, tears brimming in her eyes once more. Eleanor would have loved that, dear. She would have loved knowing that her story, after all these years, finally resonated with someone. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over Margaret's cozy living room, Sarah felt a profound sense of purpose. The letter, once a mysterious backache, was now a bridge across time, connecting her to Eleanor, to Margaret, and to a forgotten piece of history. The journey had revealed not just a simple fan letter, but a testament to the quiet heroism of a young woman who, though her dreams were deferred, never truly lost the pure heart that had penned those innocent words to her idol. And Sarah realized with a clarity that settled deep in her soul that she had a responsibility to ensure that Eleanor Vance's story, a beacon of quiet courage, would not be forgotten. The next few days in Willow Creek were a whirlwind of quiet, meaningful activity. Sarah, with Nana Rose's help, spent hours at Margaret's house carefully scanning old photographs and Eleanor's delicate sketches. Margaret, buoyed by their interest, unearthed boxes of old letters, U-book clippings, and faded newspaper articles, all offering tantalizing glimpses into the life of Eleanor Vance and the community of Willow Creek in the 1950s. Sarah meticulously organized the files, labeling each image with dates and descriptions provided by Margaret. There were photos of a young Eleanor smiling shyly in a school portrait, her eyes bright and full of life. There were snapshots of her and Margaret as giggling teenagers, posing awkwardly at school dances or sitting under the very oak tree in Margaret's front yard. Margaret pointed out details in the photos. The handmade dress Eleanor was wearing in one picture, sewn by her mother, the way Eleanor's eyes would light up when she talked about music, the quiet determination in her expression even as a child. "She loved this town, you know," Margaret said, looking at a photo of Eleanor standing on the steps of the old town hall. "But she also dreamed of what lay beyond it. Elvis was part of that beyond for her." Sarah also created a detailed narrative of Eleanor's story, incorporating excerpts from the now famous letter. She carefully explained its discovery, the mystery of its unopened state, and the heartbreaking truth of Eleanor's deferred dreams due to her mother's illness. She emphasized Eleanor's courage and selflessness, portraying her not as a victim, but as a quiet hero. Mrs. Henderson, at the Historical Society, was thrilled. "This is invaluable," she exclaimed, her voice filled with genuine appreciation as Sarah showed her the digital collection. So often, the stories of ordinary people, especially women, are lost to time. But these are the stories that truly define a community. Eleanor's experience, her sacrifice, it speaks volumes about the era, about family, and about the human spirit. Sarah also discussed the original letter with Mrs. Henderson. "It belongs here, doesn't it?" Sarah suggested, holding the fragile paper. "With Eleanor's story." "It's a part of Willow Creek's history," Mrs. Henderson agreed wholeheartedly. "It would be an honor to display it. Perhaps we could create a Willow Creek story. It would be a wonderful way to honor Eleanor and to teach younger generations about the lives of those who came before them." The letter had found its true home, not with Elvis Presley, but where its story could be fully understood and appreciated. It would serve as a poignant reminder of a young woman's dreams and the quiet sacrifices made in ordinary lives. Before they left Willow Creek, Sarah and Nana Rose spent a final afternoon with Margaret. They sat on the porch swing, the same one Eleanor and Margaret had probably shared decades ago, sipping lemonade and talking. Margaret shared more anecdotes, not just about Eleanor, but about life in Willow Creek during the 1950s, the dances at the community hall, the shared meals, the way neighbors looked out for one another. "Thank you, Sarah," Margaret said, her hand resting on Sarah's arm. "You've given me a wonderful gift. You've brought Eleanor back to me in a way, and you've helped me remember a time that was, well, it was full of its own challenges, but also so much beauty." "Thank you, Margaret," Sarah replied sincerely. "You helped me understand so much, not just about Eleanor, but about history, and about what really matters." As they drove out of Willow Creek, leaving the charming houses and quiet streets behind, Sarah felt a lightness in her heart. The initial intrigue of the unopened letter had transformed into something far more profound. It had been a journey, not just into the past, but into the depths of human experience, love, dreams, sacrifice, and the enduring power of hope. She looked at Nana Rose, who was humming softly as she drove. "You know, Nana," Sarah said, "I came here thinking I'd find out why a letter to Elvis wasn't opened, but I found so much more. I found Eleanor's story." Nana Rose smiled. "That's often how it is with history, dear. You start with one question, and it leads you to 100 more. And along the way you find pieces of yourself too." Sarah looked out at the passing scenery, the endless fields bathed in the late afternoon light. The unopened letter had connected her, not just to a famous musician, but to an ordinary girl who had lived a life of quiet strength. And, in doing so, it had illuminated the extraordinary beauty found in the forgotten corners of history and the remarkable resilience of the human heart. Life back home resumed its normal rhythm, but for Sarah, everything felt subtly changed. The old fan letter, now carefully framed, didn't sit on her desk anymore. It was instead on its way to the Willow Creek Historical Society, where it would be displayed in its own small, poignant exhibit. Sarah knew it belonged there, a testament to Eleanor Vance's quiet courage, a piece of Willow Creek's heart. The experience had shifted something within her. She still enjoyed her modern music and social media, but she approached them with a new perspective, a deeper appreciation for the stories behind every song, every fleeting moment. Past was no longer a dusty collection of facts. It was a living, breathing tapestry of human lives. She found herself thinking about Eleanor often. Eleanor, with her dreams of music and art, her quiet strength, her selfless sacrifice. Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude for the opportunity to have brought Eleanor's story to light. It wasn't about solving a grand mystery. It was about honoring a life-giving voice to a dream that had been locked away for far too long. Sarah kept in touch with Margaret Miller. They exchanged emails, sometimes long, heartfelt ones, sometimes just quick updates. Margaret would tell Sarah about the progress of the Historical Society exhibit, or share another small memory of Eleanor that had bubbled up from the depths of her mind. Sarah, in turn, told Margaret about her school projects, her own hopes for the future, and how Eleanor's story continued to inspire her. The bond between the teenager and the elderly woman, forged across generations by an old letter, grew stronger with each passing week. One evening, as Sarah was listening to an old Elvis record, "Can't Help Falling in Love," one of his more gentle, reflective songs, she picked up her own sketchbook. She hadn't drawn much since childhood, but the image of Eleanor's delicate guitar sketch had lingered in her mind. She began to draw, letting her pencil move freely across the paper. She sketched a girl looking out at a horizon, a faint melody perhaps playing in her mind. It wasn't a perfect drawing, but it felt right. It felt like a small tribute to Eleanor, a way to continue the artistic thread that Eleanor had reluctantly laid down. She realized that the letter, though never delivered to Elvis, had found its true recipient, herself, and in a broader sense, it had been delivered to anyone who would hear Eleanor's story, anyone who needed a reminder of the quiet heroes among us, those who live lives of integrity and selflessness. The letter had taught Sarah about more than just history. It taught her about empathy, about seeking out the hidden narratives, and about the profound beauty of ordinary lives. It showed her that heroism isn't always about grand gestures or famous accomplishments. Sometimes it's about the quiet choices made in the face of adversity, about sacrificing personal dreams for the well-being of loved ones. Sarah thought about her own future, her own dreams. She had plans for college, for a career, for adventures. Eleanor's story was a powerful reminder to cherish those opportunities, to pursue her passions with conviction, and to never take her freedom to choose for granted. It also taught her the importance of family and the enduring strength found in love and connection. Sometimes when she felt overwhelmed by school or the pressures of modern life, she would remember Eleanor Vance, a girl from a different time, who had simply written a letter pouring her heart out to her idol, and then quietly set her dreams aside. And Sarah would find a renewed sense of purpose, a quiet determination. The unopened fan letter to Elvis Presley from 1958 was no longer just in backup. It was a symbol of lost dreams, but also of quiet courage, enduring hope, and the unexpected connections that can bridge time and touch hearts. Eleanor's unwritten melodies, her unsung songs, had found an echo in Sarah, a young girl from the future who would carry her story forward, ensuring that the legacy of a simple fan letter and the extraordinary girl who wrote it would continue to inspire for generations to come.